Wanderer of the Wasteland, Chapter 14, Part 1. The long-deferred hour at last arrived, in which Adam, on a ruddy gold dawn in early April, drove his burros out into the lonesome desert toward the Amargosa. He did not look back. Tecopa would not soon forget Wansfell. That was his grim thought. The long drab reaches of desert, the undulating bronze slopes waving up to the dark mountains, called to him in a language that he felt. If Adam, Larry, or Wansfell, wanderer of the wasteland, as he had come to believe himself to be, it was out in the vast open under the great white flare of sunlight and the star-studded canopy of night. This was a still morning in April, and the lurid sun, bursting above the black escarpment to the east, promised a rising temperature. Day by day the heat had been increasing, and now at sunrise the smoky heat veils were waving up from the desert floor. For Adam, the most torrid weather had no terrors, and the warmth of a morning like this felt pleasant on his cheek. He had been confined to one place without action for so long that now, as he began to feel the slow sweat burn pleasantly on his body, there came a loosening of his muscles, a relaxing of tension, a marshalling, as it were, of his great forces of strength and endurance. The gray slopes beyond did not daunt him. His stride was that of a mountaineer, and his burros had to trot to keep ahead of him. And as Adam's body gradually responded to this readjustment to the desert and its hard demands, so his mind seemed to slough off, layer by layer, the morbid, fierce, and ruthless moods that like lichens had fastened upon it. The dry, sweet desert air seemed to permeate his brain and clear it of miasmas and shadows. He was free. He was alone. He was self-sufficient, and the desert called. From far beyond that upheaved black and forbidding range, the funeral mountains, something strange, new, thrilling awaited his coming. The strife of the desert had awakened in him a craving to find the unattainable. He had surmounted all physical obstacles, and he would conquer Death Valley. He would see it in all its ghastliness. He would absorb all its mysteries. He would defy to the limit of endurance its most fatal menaces to life. In the afternoon, Adam rounded a corner of a league-long sloping mesa and gazed down into the valley of the Amargosa. It looked the bitterness, the poison, and the acid suggested it by its Spanish name. The narrow, meandering stream gleamed like silver in the sunlight, and mesquite and other brush spotted its gravelly slopes and sandy banks. As it headed him down into the valley, the sun was already westering, and soon, as he descended, it hung over the ragged peaks. He reached the creek. The burros drank, but not with relish. Adam gazed at the water of the Amargosa with interest. It was not palatable, yet it would save life. Adam set about the camp task, long-grown second nature with him, in which were always congenial and pleasant. He built a fire of dead mesquite. Then he scoured his oven with sand and greased it. He had a heavy pan which did duty as a gold pan, and a dishpan and a washpan. This he half filled with flour, and adding water began to mix the two. He had gotten the dough to about the proper consistency when a rustling in the brush attracted his attention. He thought he caught a glimpse of a rabbit. Such opportunity for fresh meat was rare on the desert. Hastily wiping his hands, he caught up his gun and stole out into the aisle between the mesquites. As luck would have it, he did espy a young cottontail, and was fortunate enough to make a good shot. Returning to camp, he made sudden discovery of a catastrophe. Jenny had come out of her nap, if indeed she had not been shamming sleep, and she had her nose in the dishpan. She was eating the dough. "How are you, camp robber?" yelled Adam, making for her. Jenny jerked up her head. The dough stuck to her nose, and the pan stuck to the dough. She eluded Adam, for she was a quick and nimble burro. The pan fell off, but the ball of dough adhered to her mouth and nose, and as she ran around camp in a circle, it was certain that she worked her jaws, eating dough as fast as she could. Manifestly for Jenny, here was an opportunity of a lifetime. When finally Adam did catch her, the dough was mostly gone. He gave her a cuff and a kick, which she accepted meekly, and drooping her ears, she apparently fell asleep again. While Adam was at his simple meal, the sun set, filling the valley with red haze and tipping with gold the peaks in the distance. The heat had gone with the sun. He walked to and fro in the lonely twilight. Jenny had given up hope of any more opportunity to pilfer and had gone to grazing somewhere down the stream. There was absolutely no sound. An infinite silence enfolded the solitude. It was such a solitude as only men of Adam's life could bear. To him, it was both a blessing and a curse. But tonight, he had an all-pervading and all-satisfying power. He seemed to be growing at one with the desert and its elements. And after a while, the twilight shadows shaded into the blackness of the night. The stars blazed. Adam had been conscious all day of the gradual relaxing of strain, and now in the lonely solitude there fell away from him the feelings and thoughts engendered at Tecopa. Loneliness and silence and time, he soliloquized as he paced his sandy beat. These will cure any trouble, any disease of mind, any agony of soul. Ah, I know, I never forget, but how different now to remember. That must be the secret of the power of the desert over men. It is the abode of solitude and silence. It's like the beginning of creation. It's like an eternity of time. By the slow healing of the long, raw wound in his heart, Adam had come to think of time's relation to change. Memory was still as poignant as ever, but a change had begun in him, a change he divined only after long months of strife. Dismukes brought a regular regurgitation of the old pain, yet it was not quite the same 8 years. How impossible to realize that until confronted by physical proofs of the passing of time. Adam saw no clear and serene haven for his wandering spirit, but there seemed to be a nameless and divine promise in the future. His steps had not taken hold of hell. He'd been driven down the naked shingles of the desert, through the storms and sand, under the infernal heat and the bitter cold, like a man scourged naked, with screaming furies to whip the air at his ears. And lo, time had begun to ease his burden, soften the pain, dim the past, and change his soul. The moment was one of uplift. "I have my task," he cried, looking high to the stars. "O stars, so serene and pitiless, and inspiring to teach me to perform that task as you perform yours." End of chapter 14, part 1.